Hey there, fellow founders. Are you looking to unlock the secrets behind rapid business growth? Join my vibrant meetup group where we dive into masterclasses on game-changing strategies every single month. We've tackled topics like building a lean marketing engine, crafting killer lead magnets, and leveraging gateway offers to sell high-ticket offers. And trust me, you don't want to miss out on the next one. Come share your experiences, learn from the best, and let's grow together. Sign up and be part of the next masterclass by going to events.sarahnoelblock.com. That's events.sarahnoelblock.com. Welcome to Tiny Marketing. This is Sarah Noel Block, and this is the podcast that helps B2B service businesses do more with less. Learn lean, actionable, organic marketing strategies you can implement today. No fluff, just powerful growth tactics that work. Ready to scale smarter? Hit that subscribe button and start growing your business with Tiny Marketing. Hello, this is Sarah Noel Block, and you are listening to episode 108 of the Tiny Marketing Show. Today, we are talking about how to find the hidden profit within your business. So, let's talk a little bit about numbers. I hate math, but for some reason, when it comes to money, math clicks for me finally, because I have some, I care a little bit more. It has to do with money. Anyhoozle, let's talk about that. When you are determining your revenue goals, what is it that you look at to decide, I want to make $300,000 this year. I want to make $500,000. I want to hit over $1 million. What is it that you're looking at to determine what your revenue goals are? So I'm going to tell you a little story. When Tiny Marketing was just a wee dream and a side hustle, my goal was to make enough revenue to make up the cost of daycare. I was working full-time, my husband's working full-time, and I was side hustling Tiny Marketing, and all I really wanted was for it to cover daycare. And anyone who has kids knows daycare is freaking expensive. It costs more than our mortgage. So that was my initial goal. And then a few years later, I decided to take Tiny Marketing full time. And my goal was to make my salary. I wanted enough contracts to make up my salary. Now, little did I know then that I had to make about triple. I had to sell about triple what I needed. If I wanted to take home $100,000, I needed to sell $300,000. That's what I'm trying to say as blah, 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 convoluted as it's coming out of my mouth. So all of my revenue goals for years and years were completely arbitrary and numbers that didn't really add up to what I would actually need or actually take home. And then I started working with a coach who had me look at my business expenses and my home expenses. So what do I absolutely need to spend money on every single month? What did I want to spend money on? So that's when we would take into consideration, I want to pay off all of my debt. I want to increase my savings. I want to go on vacation. So, but actually, attributing those specific numbers to those things. And then the last one was desire. So we had 3 categories. We had need, the things that I absolutely had to spend money on, couldn't walk away from. We had want. So those were just a little bit loftier of goals. And then we had desire. So this might be my dream vacation, might be added to that. Maybe I want to spend $10,000 on and take my kids to Disney World. So we combining that information, we used her snazzy little spreadsheet to determine what my true revenue goals should be based off of the numbers of my spend in the need, want, and desire category, and also adding 30% for taxes, which is not something that I had taken into consideration back when it was only a side hustle. So that gave me an actual number to strive towards. And because I had this number and I knew how much my average sale was and how many people converted from a sales call to a client, I knew exactly how many leads I needed to get in order to make that revenue. Then making sales became easy because it was basic math. It became so easy. And then I started hitting my numbers because I had a real reason to hit them. They weren't just pulled out of my rumpus. They were actual numbers I needed to hit. So I have a workshop coming up on November 12th or 13th. I can't remember off the top of my head. Called the Growth Playbook. It's called the 2025 Growth Playbook Experience. It's actually beyond a workshop. The 12th is when we're doing the live portion of it, but there's also going to be a secret podcast with trainings in there. There's going to be spreadsheets and templates. But basically what we're going to do is this. We're going to determine what your revenue should be for 2025 and reverse engineer it. How many leads do you need based off of metrics that I already know? Like on average, you can expect this conversion. Because if you don't have your actual numbers, we can use a baseline like that. But from there, it gets even better because we're going to build out our marketing plan. What marketing do we need to do in order to bring in those leads and hit those revenue numbers and come up with our content bank? What kind of content do we need to talk about in order to overcome objections, help people understand the transformation they're going to go through, help people trust that they can actually go through that transformation with customer stories. So we're going to do those three things. We're going to determine what revenue you need to make in 2025, how many leads you would need in order to hit that revenue goal, and what marketing you need to do, including that content bank, in order to get those leads. So if you are not already signed up, make sure to do that. It's in the show notes page. But let's get into today's episode because I am talking to Peter Giordano III. And he's talking about how to find the hidden profit within your business. Because we have these revenue goals, we know we need to hit a certain amount of leads, we know what marketing we need to do in order to hit those leads. But what if we can hit those numbers and take home even more money because we have uncovered hidden profit that was eaten up by things that don't matter within our business? That's what Peter's getting into today. And you need to go follow Peter. If you don't know him already, he has an offer called 10K in one day, where he will go through all of your information with your business and uncover $10,000 in hidden profit within your business. I recommended him to one of my friends, and she was like, he's no joke, legit. He found that 10K really easily and some. So I highly recommend you try his 10K in one day. He is offering Tiny Marketing listeners a 25% discount on that. So it's normally $1,000. You get 25% off of that. And he has a promise that if he doesn't find that 10K, you get all of that money back. So if you don't get that 10K, then you get the $1,000 back. So it's well worth it. It's well worth it. Okay. So stay tuned as we get into our conversation with Peter and talk all things profitability. Backs on this a little bit, and I'm always like, what's new?
Everything's always new.
Everything's always new, and they don't warn you. Hey, Peter, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello. I am Peter Giordano III. I'm an operating strategist for founders who sell services, and I use that term specifically. The reason being is because I look at kind of the business model holistically, because the job that I do, honestly, is to make more money, make more profit. But
I love that.
How I do it is a little bit different, right? You and I have talked about this before. I love to look at business in terms of analogies and metaphors. So I'm going to give you one. Can I do that?
Yes, I want to hear it.
All right, ready? All right, so this is how I would envision it. Ready? What I do is from an operating strategy is like this. Think of the business as like a whole set of gears. sales is one gear, marketing is another gear, finance is another gear. But when you turn one, they kind of all move together, right? Because all of the teeth are kind of connected. And so
Makes
my
sense.
whole thing is to try to, for every revenue that comes in, make sure that those gears are effective, they're efficient, and it turns as much revenue into profit as possible. That's what I do.
I love that. So we worked together in the Gateway Offer Challenge, and that's when you started conceptualizing the 10K in one day. Can you describe that offer for everybody?
I love this. This has been the Gateway Offer Challenge was a huge driver in its finalization. But I realized for so long, I was like, this has been in the works forever. So I've been a operating strategist and consultant for 5 years, and I've been working on driving profits through these business sprints. At first it was 60 days. I was like, okay, I can make it 30 days. And well, you know what? When the Gateway Offer Challenge kind of came up, I was like, why can't I package this all in one day? And so prior to that, it was kind of this amorphous growth and how can we make more money? But in reality, I just wanted to add constraints. And you actually helped me with that, which was this idea of let's focus on 10K and let's make it as fast as possible. And the reason being was it attacked kind of 3 levers. Do you mind if I talk about those 3 levers?
I'd love to hear those 3 levers.
I'm all about strategy. I used to work at Harvard as a strategist. I'm currently obviously in strategy right now, and I love the big picture and the thinking game. But I thought about this. I was like, strategy is so important, but there are actually 3 problems with it. And one is it tends to be intangible, right? Strategy just inherently is intangible, but it's still super valuable. The second thing is it tends to be higher priced. Didn't say that it's expensive. I just said it's higher priced. It just tends to be that way. And really the last thing is that it's long term. So it's hard to kind of grasp right now. And I believed in strategy work so much that I wanted to create 10K in one day as almost like a launch pad or a kickoff to say, let me prove to you that we can make 10K right now. So that's tangible. Let's do it in one day, short term, and let's reduce the risk entirely of it being high priced, because if we don't find 10K, you don't have to pay anything. And so that was kind of the kickoff for 10K in one day to really be the launch pad and kickoff for profit growth and working with other people.
I have never heard of strategy talked that way. And it's so accurate that it's hard to sell strategy because people want the thing that happens after strategy, but that thing is going to be ineffective if you don't have that foundational strategy in place. So you really answered all of the objections that people would normally have around strategy with this offer.
Yeah. And strategy is the art of making decisions, at least from my lens. Now, strategic thinking is probably more like the art of making decisions, and strategy is a foundation, but it's a tool. It is the direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that without that clear strategy, it makes things really hard to move in the right direction that you want to. And so this was my way of helping people understand and feeling a little bit less risky in that endeavor.
Yes. If you don't have a strategy, it's chaotic. You're running in every direction at one time. You're just testing things out, hoping that they work, and they're not gonna. So what I wanted to really grasp onto today, we're going to be hosting that 2025 growth planning experience in a couple of weeks. And you are brilliant at finding that profit, growing revenue. And I wanted to get into how to reverse engineer your profit based off of your offers. So what would be the first step in that? How do you determine what revenue you should be making instead of choosing an arbitrary goal?
Yeah. The word arbitrary is really important there. I will actually go one step higher and then lead into your question, which was, I think has to be a little bit of awareness in your business model. And I use the word growth as a little bit amorphous, maybe earlier on. And I do an exercise in 10K one day called max revenue. And all it is to say, within the way in which you currently operate today, your business model, whether it's your pricing, number of services, how long it takes you to actually deliver those services, it's how much can you actually make? If you had your time, now it's not 100%, because every business always has business development and always has administrative stuff. and non-revenue generating activities. But it's like, if you dedicated 100% of your time to actually revenue generating activities, like what could you max make? And that will tell you that's pretty much the most you can do without tweaking anything to your business model. So step 0, honestly, is like that awareness. What is the max that you can do?
Yes,
And then
with your current offers, because you can
totally
always
true.
adjust them.
Totally true. Now, I'm talking about services here because obviously with digital products that you can sell many times, that's technically and in theory infinite. But what I'm really focusing in on right there is the services that you actively offer.
And that is the most people who listen to this is in that category.
Yeah. Most digital products support the actual active services versus being the entire thing. That said, it could still be, but typically that's the relationship. So to answer the question, right, that was step 0, because one of the first things you need to know about me is probably I'm going to use my hands. And the second thing is I talk a lot in frameworks. So the second part is really is a fundamental, like, sustainable framework, which is cost must be less than price, which must be less than value. Like, to me, that is that's where your real sustainable advantage comes in terms of like growing a business and understanding how much you actually need to make that profit. And your cost could make up a number of things, right? It is how much it actually physically costs to run your business without generating any revenue, any fixed. The cost for you to deliver your services, right? And so just knowing that as your baseline is really, really, really important. One step above that, obviously, being price. Now, price, we could talk about a whole
episode dedicated
whole different
to
thing to price. But I think that price is influenced by positioning that you have, the principles that you have as well, whether you like hourly or fixed base or value based. Plus, it needs to account for this formula, this sustainable formula, that the cost must be less than the price, which is less than the value. And then your real driver is to increase the value or decrease the cost. Now, again, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think that formula is absolutely critical to determining your success and determining what you should actually price, as well as your revenue and your profit levels.
I want to pause right there.
Yep.
How do you determine the value of your offer?
Yeah, I think that's a very hard question, because this goes back to the first thing that we talked about with strategy, right? It's a little bit intangible. And with strategic work, it tends to rely on outside factors, right? The market, there is the actual execution. So what I like to describe as value, let's go back to my 10K in one day. My 10K in one day is $10,000 worth of value, at least $10,000 worth of value. And so what I did there was I wanted to take that really hard, intangible, like as much as possible number, and I wanted to put boundaries to it. So one way in which I approach this kind of hard answer to value is by adding constraints and getting more specific to say, I will give you this with this for this.
An outcome plus time frame.
Correct.
I mean, that's a perfect way to also think about what your offer containers should be. What outcomes are you going to provide in what set of time?
I'll just speak to just a principle that I mentioned. I kind of approach this idea of being a magic money machine. So with strategy and with the words value and Running a business, is my fear is I never want to be seen as a cost, ever. I only ever want to be seen as an asset. And so one of the answers to value is, how can I create value? How can I always be seen as an asset? And it goes back to this formula, right? If I can give you value, price is less than that and cost is less than that, then I have a sustainable business model. And so what I want to do is, magic money machine is, you give me one, I give you two. And in this case, it's really, you give me one, I give you 10, right? For 10K in one day. So in the grand scheme of things, I think adding constraints to what value is to the expectation is really actually important in this game.
Hey there, amazing founders. Ready to take your business to the next level? Join our Gateway Offer Challenge and watch your sales soar. In this challenge, you'll get mini Gateway Offer trainings to perfect your offers. Learn how to structure your documentation so it sells for you. Create buzz around your offer and identify eager clients with our sales training. Plus, get exclusive outreach templates that take the guesswork out of prospecting. And because selling should be fun, we've gamified this challenge. Who can sell the most gateway offers? And let's not forget, you'll also learn how to effortlessly upsell to your signature offer. Ready to level up? Join the Gateway Offer Challenge today. Your business will thank you. Go to challenge.sarahnoelblock.com. That is CHALLENGE.SARAHNOELBLOCK.com. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So we have an idea on how to price according to value. Now, how do we figure out what our revenue goals should be?
Well, let me ask this: is in the first year of business, it's really hard to determine that because I think you're really fixated on figuring out how to do this. Same is true probably for years 2, years 3, years 4. And I say this because I think this is a really long-term game. I like to say the goal isn't to win, the goal is to keep playing. And so revenue is simply a formula for the business game, right? If you back in from your cost, you back into your services, you're going to be able to derive basically how much revenue that you have to actually make to make this, as I said, sustainable, to be able to keep playing. And so I think that this is a little bit of a push and pull game in terms of how much profit you actually have to make. I told you I was all about profit in the beginning. So I'll ask you is, what are your thoughts basically on that question in terms of how you develop revenue?
Yeah. So I wrote about this on LinkedIn recently, where originally my revenue goals were based off of my salary. Like I wanted to match my salary when I left corporate. But then I realized, my salary is not what I'm getting. It's the profit. I would need to match.
Profit.
Yeah, I would need to match my profit to my salary for it to actually equate. So now what I do for my revenue goals is I look at my business expenses and the lifestyle expenses that I have. What do I need in order to live the lifestyle that I want? And I just break it down to every little piece of what my life costs. And then, add 30% for taxes. And that's how I roughly come up with my revenue goals.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It goes right back to our formula, right? Cost, price. Now, price is the price of your services times how many services you actually deliver. And so you're taking this really super formulaic approach that fits both your lifestyle needs as well as your business needs.
Yeah. And I needed to because I didn't know what I didn't know at the beginning. Originally, it was, I want to cover daycare costs. And then it turned into, I want to cover my salary. And then I was like, well, that's not enough either.
Yeah.
And then I had to look at, what do I actually get at the end?
Yeah.
And what do I need?
Yeah. Another way of answering that, you just said 2 words that were really important: need and want, right? And if we think about this, strategy is a big picture game, right? We need to think about this. Need, want, love, right? How much do I need to actually make to keep this game going? How much do I want to make, right, to achieve my goals? How much would I love to make to really just feel, because I think feeling and emotion is really a big part of it, is also that I feel like I'm going to continue to make progress. And so there probably are 3 thresholds. Knowing the base level is really important because at some point, if you don't convert that revenue into profit, the game will be over.
Yes. I worked with a business coach last year who had us create our revenue goals based off of 3 categories. It was need, and we put in like the bills that we just couldn't get away from. And it was like the baseline of what we needed to make. Want, and those included those little extras like paying off debt completely, putting together your savings and all of that. And then desire, which was if adding in your dream vacations and things like that. So we had like 3 levels of revenue goals that we would work towards. And then myself, I took that one step further and I was like, okay, well, what's my conversion rate? How many leads do I need to actually make that? How much profit am I making from each of those clients? What's the lifetime value of them?
See what you're saying here. And I love this because you are bringing a formulaic approach to business. And which we sometimes wrap our identities in there. We do, totally. Business is part of us. But business is also a formula, right? And it is levels, conversion, and math that is associated with it at different levels. Now, what's awesome is you and I keep talking about this idea of, while we're talking about revenue, right? The pivot point is cost and profit, right? That is that's the determinant, because you can make $1 million and have $900,000 in expenses and still get to 100K.
Yeah.
But you could also make 200,000 revenue and have 100,000 in expenses and still make 100K, right? And so it still results in the same outcome.
Yes, I think that's where a lot of people get lost. They hear about, 100K months, but how profitable was it? Maybe you made that much, but you spent 80,000 in ads.
Yeah.
Let's look at the full picture here.
Perfectly said. Full picture, right? Strategic lens. We talked about how all of the business connects. And I think that's really important, because the moment you move something over here, it moves something over here. And knowing the relationship between those spaces is really critical. And so I will continue to agree with you that while revenue is really important to formulaically create, profit ends up being the pivot point. That's really the leverage point that we would drive home.
So you're digging into people's businesses all the time in your 10K in one day. So I want to know, where do you find that profit gets lost?
Oh, yes. Okay. I'll share it. There's 5 items in 10K in one day that we look at, right? I kind of talked about this idea. The first is costs, right? Costs and cash management. There are a lot of times just simple levers, which is, these are costs that can be avoided, or these are costs that should be included in here. Like health insurance. Sometimes people don't realize that, especially small companies, realize that health insurance can be a business cost. Software bloat, like from a lens of, right? Software is super, super easy to do that. And again, I have to say, I'm not a tax advisor whatsoever, and I'm not providing any tax advice at all. You should consult your tax advisor or your CPA. But that being said, there are a lot of expenses that do cause blow or could be included in a business. And I said cash management as well. You can do stuff with your cash to actually put it to work. And I'm all about putting it to work. So cash and cost management is easily the simplest lever. But it's also limited, because if you have 100,000 in expenses, you can only ever cut $100,000 of costs. You can't do any more. The second one that I like to look at is where I talked a little bit about max revenue, is like the time. Like, how do you spend your time within your operations? How long does it take for you to fulfill your services? And knowing how you can actually efficiently use your time, or even trade up your time, right? From non-revenue generating activities, just saying like doing your finances or doing your invoicing, you're not making any revenue at that point, to moving it to where you're actually doing sales and delivering your services. Is there a way in which you can scale up your time? To me, that is always a huge lever of profit and a huge lever of opportunity.
I want to pause there for a second. This is something that I love. I think that marketing, biz dev, and sales should always play together. That every marketing activity you do should also do biz dev or sales at the same time. So, because marketing could be just like a time suck if you're not doing it right. But if you're making sure that it's revenue generating, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, the relationship between revenue generating, business development, and non-revenue generating is really important. You can't do 100% of any of them. My framework that feels good for me, right? This is something that has taken about 5 years to figure out, is 60-30-10. 60% of my activities being in revenue generating, because revenue generating means I'm making money today. So that tends to be sales and delivering of my services. 30% is in business development. So that is doing the work today that is going to drive future revenue. Right? And that's all surrounded a lot by marketing and branding and strategy. And then the last 10% is all the admin stuff, the invoicing, the things that don't actually result in any revenue, but it is a requirement to keep your business going. And that is my framework. And that's the relationship that I like to use between those three.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also talked about like the amount of time that it takes to deliver your services. So just making sure, I like to pull out little action points that you're doing time audits when you're doing projects, especially like at the beginning, figuring out how long it takes you to deliver those projects, and then doing it, a year later and seeing if you're doing it any faster, or if you implemented some AI pieces to it, like how much time did that save you? So you know exactly how much the delivery costs you. I'm obsessive about timing, how doing time audits and making sure I know how long it takes for me to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super important because that is the majority of our work, right? Is delivering on those services. And I didn't want to not finish my 5 statements, right? I want to make sure that I cut off all of those.
Just finished 2, right?
I just did 2. So the last 3, one is pricing. Again, that is always the biggest lever of profitability. Pricing is assessing if you're underpriced or even possibly overpriced. And then 4 and 5 end up being really, can you actually just do more sales volume? Like because sometimes you actually can do more sales volume. That is the easiest lever to pull because it's just doing more, but it tends to be the furthest. And then the last one is, I would say, call it value adds. Can you increase the customer lifetime value? Can you add different offers and different value points that actually increase? And my favorite one is, if you were a wine rack builder and you built this beautiful wine rack in somebody's home, I know that it's not a service business like I am, but this is a great example, is at the end of it, can you work with another company to fill it, right? Can you work with and get a commission off of that, of filling actually the wine rack itself? It's like the small value adds that are really, really high margin to you and don't take a lot of time. And so those are really the 5 that we go through.
Yes. Okay. I want to dig in a little bit more on all of those.
Go for it.
1, we had price. So how do you figure out what the best price model is for your service?
Yeah. There are 3 frames that I kind of think about price. I think the first one is the knowing your numbers, right? We go back to the whole cost versus price versus value. And that is literally just taking a formulaic approach. That is the first one. And that makes sure that you keep going and you keep growing. And you could do that through exercises like max revenue or working with you to basically develop that formulaic approach. The second one is philosophical in principle. Like I'm going to tell you a little story right now. And what I mean by that is you could be hourly, you could be fixed, you could be value-based. I started as hourly, and I talk about this idea of principle-based because it matters. I started as hourly and it works. I was a consultant. I am a consultant. I can charge hourly, but something didn't feel right because I'm in the business of thinking, and I'd be thinking while I was brushing my teeth, but do I charge somebody while I'm brushing my teeth?
Yeah.
And so there's like this philosophical aspect that is really, really, really hard. And so you kind of have to massage around that to figure out what's right for you. And so while the formulaic approach number 1, could say, do this, your internals kind of say, just doesn't feel right. And so I moved to a value-based approach like 10K in one day, which says, let's do it outcome-based. You're going to pay me based on my outcome. If we don't hit that outcome, you don't pay me at all, sort of deal. And then I think the third positioning that we'll talk about actually is the word positioning. It is, how do you want to use price as a filter? Because price truly is a filter. And you can position it really high. You can position it very low. There is strategy in your pricing. And so I think those are the 3 approaches of many that you could go down the avenue. But that second one really took some experience to figure out the philosophical piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll walk through how I did my pricing throughout the lifetime of Tiny Marketing. I definitely also started hourly, but I wasn't transparent with the hours. I knew how many hours it took me to complete a project on average and how much I wanted to make an hour. So I priced it as a project, knowing how much it would be, because I didn't want to equate. I didn't want them to equate my time with hours or start dissecting what I did and saying, wow, why did it take you that long? So projects based off of the hours that I knew and the price that I wanted. And now that I'm creating more like scalable offers, if there's not a lot I can work with, it has to be like on market with where everybody else's are in that scalable offer. So it's a comparison.
Yeah. Project-based pricing to me is it's also effective, but you really need to be dialed in on what you do, right? Because you could price it at $1,000, but it takes you 50 hours or
Yeah.
100 hours, right? So project-based pricing, I think, is really effective once you know exactly what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. I was doing time audits for years before I took tiny marketing full time, and I was able to know exactly how much it would be. And there were clear deliverables that were every single month. So it made it a lot easier for me to know how much time it would actually take me.
Yeah.
So I knew the profitability on it. But the more
How do you approach value-based pricing then? Do you use value-based pricing or performance-based pricing?
No, I've never done that. Because when I first started, it was all content creation that I was doing. So it was really hard to equate that to the specific value that you would get. Now I'm creating strategies with people to help them hit their revenue goals. So it's more like growth that I'm helping them with, but I'm doing it in this scalable way where, I can't charge $1 bajillion just because they want to make $1 bajillion.
Yeah. You keep driving up the revenue, then you can send over to me and I'll help drive up the profit.
Yes, that works. Yeah, it's crazy how much you need to think about your profit versus your revenue. You don't think about it until you're in it and you're like, why am I getting this much in sales if I'm only taking home, my taxes are showing me that I'm making so little?
Yeah, I was like I said, I worked at Harvard for 7 years, and even before that, a number of other companies. And just the transformation from earning an income, right, to having to generate a revenue, right, generate revenue or generate dollars as a business was fundamentally different. And it was different for me because I was always what you might call like back office, like I was in finance and strategy, and so everything was kind of the infrastructure behind it. So when I moved over to become an entrepreneur or run my one-person business, it's like, wow, this definitely feels a lot different. And so the idea of revenue may seem simple. It is not whatsoever. Now, it can be a formula, but it doesn't, the aspects of it aren't simple. And there is nuance to that, particularly when you've been an employee for so long and then you pop over.
I mean, I know I was an employee for 15 years before I started Tiny Marketing, and a lot of other people out there. I know very few people who left school and started a business immediately. I do know a couple, which I'm like, you're brave. I was not. But coming from that world and trying, all of a sudden you're thrown into, I need to be the operations person, the finance person, the sales person, and then the delivery person of everything. It's a hard adjustment. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do it right. And the art of reducing my expenses to increase my profit.
Yeah. Art and science.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, we brought up formulaic, and that's the science side, but then there's the art side, right? We talked about philosophical and principles and the nuances to it. And I'm totally on board that there is both art and science in this game.
Yeah, there really is. So there was one other piece that I wanted to pull out from your formula, and that was increase in the lifetime value of your customers. So there are a couple ways to do it. You can do it with cross sells. What else would make sense for them to have after they've purchased another thing? Or order bumps.
Yeah, I think, well, I also want to add in so like the gateway offers, because I need to, I'm not just plugging it, but like the value of demonstrating the first half step is also critical to the post step. And I think, and having something to sell for the next step is really important to have, because sometimes you don't have anything. And so you mentioned upsells. I mean, personally, like I think referrals are actually really important too, is like, can you, like my wine example, right? Or commissions or however that may be, so long as it's allowable, is can you add value at a high margin? What are the small little tweaks that you can actually do that create much higher margin for your little time? And so like upsells, I get it. recurring either subscription or one-time offers are also really helpful in that. But I think the most value you get is tacking on to the primary and signature offer that you actually have, because they're going to keep coming back for more.
Yes. So I would consider that an order bump, tacking on to the original one. Yeah. And you can do that through a referral partner, if like a partner who can help with the other steps that you don't, or affiliate partnership. So you're getting a commission for passing along that. There was something else. Oh, thinking about your offer ecosystem as a staircase. So you mentioned the gateway offer. That is such an important piece that you can't miss out on, because it's setting the strategy for the signature offer, taking them through the complete transformation. But it really is a staircase, because you're earning trust. And then with the gateway offer, you're building the initial strategy. So you know exactly what you need to do to get them through that transformation. And they're on board. They have to say hell yes to it before they're moving on to upselling to that signature offer. And then the next step up in that staircase would be what you were talking about. Those order bumps, cross sells, the referrals, the partnerships that you have.
Yeah, I find it's so cool when I go through these 10K in 1 days, and even just formally in businesses, I like really connecting specifics to, so instead of just being order bumps, just like making it tangible for them as it relates to their business. And I find there is a little bit of nuance though, as you kind of dig into individuals' business models and the operating models, because they probably have skill sets and they have value that they don't even realize that they have. And it's just the small little tweaks that you can make to that signature offer or to those former offers. And if we spend a little bit of time just thinking about what else could I do to help this client or help this customer? And every single time you say, well, what else can I actually do? I think an opportunity shines a light.
I love that you said that, because that's the magic of a gateway offer, is that you are having that conversation with the company. I have all of the stakeholders in mind, and you're getting all of the challenges that they're going through, all of their goals. You know exactly what they desire that transformation to look like. So you can customize your offer to meet their needs, and you can find those plug and play partnerships and referrals to further enhance what they needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been thinking about this recently, which is like our game of business. Like, we will work with others to solve a specific problem at a specific time. And as time passes, right, you kind of grow out of, you go into a different problem, right? You solve one problem, the next problem in line is standing there waiting for you. And it just kind of shifts and it morphs. And the longer that you can keep helping an individual solve the problem while having that trust is super impactful, right? You can save the next problem, or even have a network of people that you can call upon to help, right? Because you're still within the ecosystem. And that's not just to say to keep them within the ecosystem, but in all honesty, it's like you have developed a language while you're working together at this current moment in time. And the more problems that you really can help them solve, the faster you can bring them along. Now, when I say faster, I don't just mean like, let's make as much money as fast as possible can, because I do think that there is this notion of the cliff, where you grow too fast and every broken promise falls off the cliff and it echoes loudly. But it's just like, I think that you can work with an ecosystem of people at a given moment in time and just keep building and building and building. And then at some times, it's time to go, right? It's time to move on. They've graduated from your work. And you yourself, as the business owner or the service provider, also has probably graduated on from your work, and you've adapted and you've evolved and you've created kind of a new set of skill set that you can solve for others.
I love that you said that. It's exactly how you should start, like, mapping your offers, is look at that that dream client that you want. I've talked about this before. I've talked about this in the 5 golden offers, that you want to, like, your lead magnet should be 3 steps before they're ready to work with you in a one-to-one. And thinking about it in that way, but keep going like you're talking about it. Like when you're done with your signature offer, what's the next problem that you can solve for them? And that could be the next step of your offer. And you can really map it out thinking holistically
Yeah.
on what they're going to be dealing with at different times.
I'll say this to grab onto that, which is a lot of times we default to being problem solvers. And I would say your advantage is being a problem identifier. Because like I said, there is always going to be a problem somewhere. It's probably going to be bigger, stronger, faster once you solve this one. If you can be a problem identifier and really understand what that problem is for someone, I mean, you've probably almost made the solution itself obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So is like approaching this idea as being both the problem solver, but also this problem identifier and creating that clarity. Because they're a founder, right? You're a founder. You have a million things to do. You have a million things to do, right? And if you don't do one, the business starts dying, right? I mean, that's a little bit over the top, but in the grand scheme of things, you have a lot of things to do. And if somebody as a service provider can help that founder, can really just identify and get super clear and understand, whether it be the revenue formula or what's that expense or just what's next in your trajectory, it's really important. Be the problem identifier. Totally be the problem identifier.
Yes, yes. Once you hit that goal, what's the next thing that's going to be going on? It might be like scalability, expanding your team, but you can identify those problems when you think about your client over the lifetime of their business and where they will be at different points. Because if you do your job, you're getting them to that next milestone and new problems arise when they get to that milestone.
Agree. I mean, we may be strategists or consultants or coaches or service providers, but there's like little aspects of each that kind of infuse into what you offer. You're not just this one thing. Like we're human, right? We have different skill sets and we have different lenses and different perspectives, and we can help and kind of shape their direction. One of my frameworks, like I told you about a number of frameworks, is what I really want to be is I want to be the bumpers on a bowling alley, right? That's what I want you to do. Because if you want to hit a strike or you want to knock the pins down, my goal isn't to say, just throw it here. My goal is to basically say, here, this is where I'm going to give you the guardrails. I'm going to be the safety net on that side, but it's your job to actually throw the ball and position it to the problem that you actually want to solve.
Yeah, that's a great visual for it. So as we wrap up, can you tell the audience where they can find you and how they can work with you?
Yeah, I think the best way to find me is on LinkedIn or my personal website, petergiordano3.com, all spelled out. Right? I did that way. That's why I introduced myself in the beginning. And join me for 10K in one day. It's a profit accelerator. It literally happens in one day. And we'll find 10K in your business. And since we're here, anybody who's listening to this and mentions Sarah, I'll do a 25% discount definitely on 10K in one day. Absolutely.
That is awesome. You guys need to grab it.
Please do. Please do. You'll really enjoy it because at the end of the day, you really will understand the mechanics of your business. And those gears I talked about in the beginning, it'll make more sense and you'll convert more revenue into profit.
Yes. And just a little testimonial. I told one of my friends about him and she raved. She went through the 10K in one day and she said it was amazing experience.
I loved it.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for joining this episode and listening to Peter and I talk all things profitability. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, comment if you're on YouTube. Actually, Spotify does this too. You can comment wherever you are pretty much. And go follow Peter on LinkedIn. That's where he's the most active. And make sure to take advantage of that 10K in one day. It's an amazing offer. And you can't go wrong because if he doesn't find that 10K, you get your money back. I mean, why not? Why not try it? For everybody who is listening on the podcast, remember you can also watch the actual live interview on YouTube. My channel is just my name, Sarah Noel Block. So you can find me over there. It's under the podcast playlist, Tiny Marketing. And I will see you next week. Oh, P.S. P.S. Do not leave yet. Remember to sign up for the 2025 Growth Playbook Experience, where we will go through the process of determining what revenue goals you should have in 2025 and how many leads you will need to get there. And then last, the marketing plan and content bank that will bring in those leads. So make sure to sign up for that. That will be down in the show notes. All right, I'll see you next week. You love all things tiny marketing. Head down to the show notes page and sign up for the wait list to join the Tiny Marketing Club, where you get to work one-on-one with me with trainings, feedback, and pop-up coaching that will help you scale your marketing as a B2B service business. So I'll see you over in the club.